Yesterday we worked on adding decimals. Today we'll move on with subtracting decimals. So our learning target for today is to be able to subtract with decimal numbers accurately. So you'll have a few problems to complete to show your work. So quick review of just subtraction in general. These are not numbers with decimals, but if I were given the problem 473 minus 204, we learned earlier this year when we were working with subtraction that just like with addition, really important to write the problem where we are lining up the places. So writing in columns where the ones column line up, the tens column lines up, and the hundreds column lines up, and so on. Then I'm always subtracting the bottom number from the top number. So I read from top down and ask myself, what is 3 minus 4? I can't do that, so I need to regroup. So I'm going to come over here to the tens, take a 10, and bring it over here to the ones. So if I bring over 10 ones, I now have 13 ones. 13 minus 4 is 9. 6 minus 0 is 6. And then 4 minus 2, 2. So 473 minus 204 is 269. I first lined up the places and I did a little regrouping. If I am given decimal numbers, a bottle has 0 and 5/10 liters of water, but Abby drinks 3/10 liter of water from it. So how much water is left? That would be a subtraction problem. What would I do? The same thing that we learned with subtraction in general, and then yesterday with subtraction of decimals. You need to line up the numbers by lining up the decimals, and when you do that, all the other places will fall into place. The tenths place, the hundredths place if there were one, the ones place, the tens place, and so on. So line up those decimals and then complete the subtraction problem. Starting from top down, 5 minus 3 is 2. I can do that. I don't need to regroup that time. Bring down that decimal point, and then 0 minus 0 is 0. So the answer to 5/10 minus 3/10 is 2/10. And of course, if you look at visuals of what that means, here we've started with 5/10. Take away 3 of those tenths, and that would leave us 2/10. Or if you like the place value chart, if you start with 5 and take away 3, that's showing visually what we're doing when we're subtracting. Now, if I get a problem like this, subtract 7/10 from 1 and 5/10. The thing that we need to be careful of here is paying attention to the order of the numbers as I write them down. Since this problem is saying I'm subtracting 7/10 from 1 and 5/10, 1 and 5/10 is the larger number, and with subtraction it's important that we are always subtracting from the larger number. So the larger number is written on top. So I rewrite the numbers. I'm subtracting 7/10 from 1 and 5/10. So my problem is 1 and 5/10 minus 7/10. And when I line up the decimals, that means I've lined up my places, and then I can ask myself, what is 5 minus 7? I can't do that without regrouping. I need to come over here and take a 1 and trade it in for 10/10 because we know 10/10 make 1. So that means then if I bring those 10/10 over, I now have 15/10. 15 minus 7 is 8. Bring down the decimal point, and then 0 minus 0 is 0. So 1 and 5/10 minus 7/10 will be 8/10. If you like the visuals to help support what it is you're doing, you can pause this video and read through these. These are some great visuals explaining what we're doing when we're regrouping. especially here. These steps are a nice visual of what we're doing when we're regrouping and why we need to do that. But let's go ahead and practice. Subtract 1 6/100 from 2 24/100. Pay attention to what this is asking. Pause the video and you do the work, and then let's compare. Since we're subtracting from 2 24/100, 2 24/100 should be written first, minus 1 6/100. Lining up the decimals. Did you get those decimals lined up? Now ask yourself, 4 minus 6. I can't do that without regrouping, so I'm going to come over here and get a tenth, so there'll be 1/10 left, and I'm going to bring 10/100 over here to the hundredths column, so I now have 14/100. 14 minus 6 is 8. 1 minus 0 is 1. Bring down that decimal point, and then 2 minus 1 is 1. So my answer is 1 18/100. How about 36/100 minus 18/100? Pause and solve. Did you start off by writing these numbers in the correct order? The larger number on top, and then you're subtracting the bottom from the top. So you're asking yourself, 6 minus 8 is what? I can't do that without regrouping. Come over here and take a tenth. Bring 10/100 over, so now I have 16/100. 16 minus 8 is 8. 2 minus 1 is 1. Bring down that decimal point. So did you get 0 and 18/100? 2 and 35/100 minus 1 and 19/100. Pause and solve, and then let's compare. Five minus 9. Can't do that without regrouping. 15 minus 9. 6. 2 minus 1. 1. Bring down that decimal point. So 1 and 16/100. How are you doing? Always starting off by lining up those decimals. Are you getting your decimals lined up? How about this? 5 and 5/10 minus 1 and 38/100. Now what we learned with addition, I'm writing my numbers, so I'm lining up the decimals. And I'm noticing that one number only goes to the tenths place and the other number goes to the hundredths place. Remember that when that happens, I can put in a 0 placeholder because 5/10 is equivalent to 50/100. Now I can solve. I kind of need that 0 for my subtraction anyway. 0 minus 8, I can't do. So I take a tenth, I do some regrouping. I take a tenth and bring over 10/100. 10 minus 8 is 2. 4 minus 3 is 1. Bring down that decimal point, and 5 minus 1 is 4. So my answer is 4 and 12/100. So that time we needed to add a 0 placeholder. How about this? Subtract 2 and 4/10 from 5. We came across this yesterday as well. If I have a whole number and so it doesn't have a decimal point, what does that mean? It means that the decimal point would be right next to it with 0/10. If I have the whole number 5, that means I have 5 wholes and no tenths. But if I'm going to subtract a number with a decimal from it, I need to add the decimal point and that 0 placeholder to be able to do the subtraction work. 0 minus 4, can't do. So come over here and do some regrouping. 10 minus 4, 6. Bring down that decimal point, and 4 minus 2. 2 and 6/10. So that time we practiced that if you have a whole number, you need to add the decimal point and 0 placeholders so that you can subtract. And of course, money. Decimals are found in money, and that's often where we see and practice our decimal work the most. So $24.67 minus $8.79. Did you write them in that correct order because of this word from? That means if I'm subtracting this number from this number, I write that number first. 7 minus 9 I can't do, so I regroup. 17 minus 9, that would be 8. Now 5 minus 7 I also can't do, so I need to come over here and regroup again. Now I've got 15 tenths. 15 minus 7 is 8. Bring down this decimal point. 3 minus 8, I can't do that either. I need to regroup again. So now I have 13 ones. 13 minus 8 is 5. And 1 minus nothing, 1. So that problem involved a lot of regrouping. So work slowly, working carefully as you go, but always starting with lining up these decimal points, and then everything else falls into place. And you subtract as you know how to subtract. So today there's another worksheet. If you like those for practicing, go ahead and use that worksheet. There's also some IXL. Sometimes these decimal numbers may go up to places further than the hundredths place. And then this one is kind of a challenge. So for those of you who are looking for those challenges, as I know some of you are, these are kind of like puzzles where it gives you an addition or a subtraction problem and you need to figure out the missing number. So you're not finding the answer actually of the problem. You're finding like the original number to start with. So you're needing to work backwards a little bit. So it's kind of like puzzles. So if you want that challenge, check that out. And then go back to Seesaw and show your skills from today. Remember, line up those decimals and then subtract with regrouping as you know how to do.